Jai Om Vishnuvad Puraman Supari Prajapacharya Ashto Turasat Sri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Miraj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kundigiri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you, Maharaj, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. It's Friday, September 17th. The year is 2021, and we're reading the Srimad-Bhagavatam second canto with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami, hosted by ISKCON of New Jersey. We're in the 10th chapter. Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. And tonight we're picking up with verse number 7. So 2:10:7. I've posted that in the chat box. Glad you could be with us again, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Abhasascha nirodhascha yatostya vashiyate saashraya param brahma paramatmeti shabdyate. The Supreme One, who is celebrated as the Supreme Being, or the Supreme Soul, is the supreme source of the cosmic manifestation, as well as its reservoir and winding up. Thus, he is the supreme fountainhead, the absolute truth. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Tadhati Shapadantikam Pandehang Shri Guru Shri Jatapadakamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Shagrajatam Shahagana Raganathan Vitam Stam Sadivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Shahagana Ladita Sri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hori Priye Vansha Kolpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhobhye Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I wanted to look at the Sanskrit here just for a bit. Abhasascha nirodhascha. Abhasha means the cosmic manifestation, or sarga. We've read that there are 10 categories of truths described in a Mahapurana, sarga, visarga, up to nirodha are 9. And then we get the ashray, the source of all of these. So I don't have my commentary at hand by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, but as I recall, he says that this cha indicates not only Abhasha, the sarga, the cosmic manifestations, creation, but all of the categories. All the others are included by virtue of cha, and so on, as it were. Yeah, thank you. Creation, visarga, sthiti, all of them. So they're all included. All the 9 categories are included by virtue of these, this cha. Yata asti, we're reminded, janmad yasyataha, the source from which everything proceeds. So yata asti, that source from which adhyavasishyate, adhyavasiyate, from which they're all manifest, all of these 9 categories. Sa ashraya, sa is he, appears to be correlative with yata. That source from which everything comes, he is the ashray, the shelter of everything. And he's the supreme, param brahma. He's Brahma, Paramatma, iti shabdyate. Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavan, iti shabdyate. So that source is Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. He's also Brahma, he's also Paramatma. So that's all indicated here. Now, let us proceed. Again, the translation, the Supreme One, who's celebrated as the Supreme Being or the Supreme Soul, is the supreme source of the cosmic manifestation, as well as its reservoir and winding up. Thus, he is the supreme fountainhead, the absolute truth. Purport. Synonyms for the supreme source of all energies are given in the very beginning of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Janmad yasyayataha. He's the source of birth and maintenance and destruction. of the universe, of everything. And in the second chapter, Vadanti tat tattvavidas tattvam yajganam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate. So here the synonyms are Brahma, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. The Brahma is the absolute truth. Paramatma is the absolute truth. Bhagavan is the absolute truth. They're all the same absolute truth, indicated by different names or from different angles of vision. Here the synonyms are Brahma, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. The word iti, used in the verse under discussion, completes the synonyms and thus indicates Bhagavan. This iti word, this I learned from Gopi Pranadhana Prabhu, can be taken to mean quote. So when you see, for example, a commentary, the commentators will say Rajavidya, Rajaguyam iti. So that iti means quote Rajavidya, Rajaguhyam, or as we have it, Brahmeti. He's known as Brahma, Paramatma iti, Bhagavan iti. So it's in some ways the equivalent of our quotes. And there's also an ityadi, quote, and so on. So the word is used to complete the synonyms. In other words, the Brahma, Paramatma, Bhagavan, they're the same absolute truth, and Bhagavan is the last word of the absolute truth. This will be further explained in later verses, but the word Bhagavan ultimately means Lord Krishna, because the Srimad-Bhagavatam has already accepted the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Krishna. Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. So this is a nice, what should we say? You'd say a nice move, but I don't think that's quite the way to say it. But the idea is that Srila Prabhupada is very nicely pointing our attention toward Bhagavan. And who is that Bhagavan? Let's fill this out. Let's not leave it just as a generalized term, Bhagavan. Who is it? It's Krishna. It's Krishna, yes. Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. The Bhagavatam is pointing, yes, to the absolute truth. That absolute truth is known in three ways. And what's the ultimate feature? Bhagavan. And who is that Bhagavan? Krishna. So Janmadhyasya, the original source of all energies, or the summum bonum, the highest truth, is the absolute truth called Param Brahma, etc. And Bhagavan is the last word of the absolute truth. So he's known in different ways. Even in the West, we have the one, the ultimate, the supreme, the alpha and omega. We have all these various ways of referring to the absolute truth or the divine. And here, the last word, the ultimate word in the absolute truth is Bhagavan. And who is that Bhagavan? Krishna. In fact, but even with the synonyms for Bhagavan, such as Narayan, Vishnu, and Purusha, there's so many terms that can be used instead of Bhagavan, equivalent with Bhagavan. But the last word is Krishna, as confirmed in the Bhagavad-Gita. Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate, etc. This is Bhagavad-Gita 10.8. And it's rhetorically what's going on here is quite neat. Aham sarvasya prabhava mata sarvam pravartate. It's a cross. I'm the source of everything. Everything comes from me. So it goes, this way and that way. It says it's forwards and backwards. I'm the source of everything. From me, everything proceeds. So no doubt, when we speak of Janmati Asya Yataha, the source from which everything comes, it's yes, the absolute truth, and yes, Bhagavan, and finally, it's Krishna, confirmed both in Bhagavad-Gita and Srimad-Bhagavatam. Besides that, the Srimad-Bhagavatam is the representation of Lord Krishna as a sound incarnation of the Lord. Krishna svatam opakate dharma gyanadi bisaha kalo nashtadrishamesha puranarko dunoditaha. Thus, by general conclusion, Lord Krishna is the ultimate source of all energies. And the word Krishna means that. And to explain Krishna, or the science of Krishna, the Srimad-Bhagavatam has been prepared. For others, Krishna may simply mean, mythological hero of the Mahabharata, or a charming cowherd, or whatever their conception is, Hindu deity. But we have to go by the science of Krishna. The Srimad-Bhagavad-Gita is the introductory science, and the advanced science of Krishna is Srimad-Bhagavatam. Puranarko Dunodita. This Bhagavatam is Krishna in the form of transcendental literature. So the whole Bhagavatam is meant to point us toward Krishna. So when we're speaking of Bhagavan, the Bhagavad Purana, the Purana concerned with Bhagavan, is not going to point us somewhere else, as the mundane commentators would point us somewhere else. Bhagavad-Gita, the song of Bhagavan. Who's Bhagavan? Well, they're equivocal about it. And even when Bhagavan says, me, they say, well, not really you. It's like according to the way you look at it, and, it might be you, it might be somebody else, it might be something within you. No, Krishna says me. So the Bhagavad-Gita is the science of Bhagavan, and the Bhagavad Purana, Srimad-Bhagavatam, is the science of Bhagavan, and both point us toward Krishna. In the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, this truth is indicated in the questions and answers by Sutta Goswami and great sages like Shaunaka. And in the first and second chapters of the canto, this is explained. Yes. In the third chapter, the subject is more explicit, and in the fourth chapter, even more explicit. So the Bhagavatam in the first canto directs our attention more and more toward Krishna. In the second canto, the absolute truth as the personality of Godhead is further emphasized. And the indication is the Supreme Lord Krishna. The summary of Srimad-Bhagavatam in 4 verses, as we've already discussed, is succinct, concise. This Supreme Personality of Godhead in the ultimate issue is confirmed by Brahma in his Brahma Samhita as Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha. So it's concluded in the third canto of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. The complete subject matter is elaborately explained in the 10th and 11th cantos of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. In the matter of the Manvantaras, or reigns of the Manus, such as the Swayambhuva Manvantara and Chakshush Manvantara, as they're discussed in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th cantos of Srimad-Bhagavatam, Lord Krishna has indicated these cantos are taking us through history and referencing the genealogical or the, genealogical succession from the different manvantaras. They're discussing the different family lines and the different things that happen in the different reigns of Manu. And it's always Krishna who's indicated. Wherever we go, Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. In the 8th canto, in reference to the Vaivashata Manvantara, same subject is explained indirectly. And in the 9th canto, the same purport is there. In the 12th canto, the same is further explained, specifically regarding the different incarnations of the Lord. Thus, it is concluded by studying the complete Srimad-Bhagavatam that Lord Sri Krishna is the ultimate summum bonum, or the ultimate source of all energies. And according to the grades of the worshippers, the indications of the nomenclature may be differently explained. Nomenclature just means different names, as Narayan, Brahma, Paramatma, etc. Are there any comments or questions here so far?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. And until other comments or questions roll in, I just wanted to express an appreciation for the way that the text is being rolled out. And in case you might want to comment on it, but I was looking at the verse itself, and it's rather terse. It's just 4 poetic lines. And then I looked at Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's purport on it, which is pretty short, just a paragraph or so. But Prabhupada rolls out this long thing where he's pointing again and again to Krishna as being indicated by every canto of the Bhagavatam. And it reminded me of a conversation Prabhupada was having with Brahmananda one time. Brahmananda was telling Prabhupada that he was trying to preach to this one life member in Nairobi and just reading him Prabhupada's books. And the life member was very dissatisfied. And Prabhupada said, he wants to hear your explanation. So I was thinking how that whole process is the process of the Bhagavatam itself. One person expands on it a little further. We're lucky enough to hear from you a few nights a week on it, and it just becomes greater and greater, but it builds up more of a head of steam as it comes directly to you.
When it reaches us, it's enriched by Shukumukha Amrita Dravya Samyutam, sweeter by the lips of Shukadev Goswami, sweeter by the lips of Srila Prabhupada, coming from the Goswamis in the background. When you mentioned, I was thinking of another conversation where some academic reviewer had complained basically that Srila Prabhupada writes Krishna into every verse. Wherever he's writing, he writes Krishna in. Prabhupada says, yes, he has understood. And it's not that Krishna is being thrust into the verses, but actually Prabhupada's bringing out. Krishna's everywhere. Antarasta Paramana Chayantarastam. He's in every atom, between every atom, and he's in every verse. What is that? Vedanta Krit Veda Veda Eva Chaham. All the Vedas are pointing toward Krishna. Vedaistra Sarvara Aham Eva Veda. And what is that other verse? Vede Ramayane Chaiva. Hari Sarvatra Giyate. I've left out the 2 in the middle, but that's the meaning is that whether you look in the Mahabharata or the Vedas or the Ramayana, wherever you go, it's all glorifying Krishna, the personality of Godhead. this Bhagavad Purana is not, they want to read it from their impersonal standpoint or from some, whatever their speculative idea is. But it's clear this Bhagavad Purana is meant to glorify Bhagavan, and Bhagavan, if you take the Purana on its word, is Krishna. So Prabhupada's not, like the speculators seeking to what's the word, superimpose his theoretical approach on a text and thereby do injustice to the text. Rather, for those of us who are already inclined to misunderstand things in so many ways, he just makes it plain. It's Krishna, it's Krishna, it's Krishna, it's Krishna. And I'm reminded of another place where there's a conversation, an exchange of letters that Prabhupada had with a prominent Vedic scholar, Fritz Stahl. And in the course of the discussion, the Prabhupada brought up the verse, what was it? The professor complained that, well, I don't see that chanting is required in the Bhagavad-Gita the way you seem to be saying. I don't see any place where the text is calling for that. And Prabhupada quoted him, what is that? Yatantas chadridhavrata namashantas chamam bhaktya nityukta upasate. What's the first line?
Satatam kirtayanto mam.
Satatam kirtayanto mam. Satatam kirtayanto mam. So Prabhupada said that, well, there it is, Satatam. They're always kirtayanta, having kirtan. So there it is. And Fritz Stahl wrote back and said, well, I don't think kirtan means, has to mean chanting. It can mean reciting, it can mean murmuring, it can mean, blah, 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 blah. And Prabhupada accepted all that, but then he said, but chanting or talking or murmuring about whom? He said, it is certainly Krishna. And then in a sort of masterful understatement, Prabhupada said, the significant word in this connection is mom. The significant word in this connection is mom. Read that to a Sanskrit scholar. Mom means me. So it's Krishna. You take it, you can say chanting or murmuring or whatever you like, but it's about Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada is bringing out Krishna always. So yes, we're in the dark, Tulsi Priya says, so Srila Prabhupada is elucidating, giving us light. And we've got our trustee Praveen has given us the verse. The Vede Ramayane Chaiva Purane Bharate Tata Ado Ante Chamadhye Cha Hari Sarvatra Giyate. In the Vedas, in the Ramayana, and also in the Puranas, and in the Mahabharata, Ado Ante Cha Madhye Cha. In the beginning, the middle, the end, Hari Sarvatra Giyate. Krishna is glorified, the personality of Godhead. Okay. Something else. Or shall we move on? Okay, let us move on then. Scroll down. The next two verses are going to further help us distinguish between the personality of Godhead and the living entities. Okay, there's another message. Let's see just what that is. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, it's the verse. That these next two verses are going to help us distinguish between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entities. And the verses are, I think, at least for me, not easy. They're fairly technical, I think. But if we patiently go through them, they'll help us. And so let us begin. Yodhyatmiko yam purusha, so sav evadi daivikaha, yas tatro bhaya vichcheda, purusho hyadi bhautikaha. And again, let's spend a little time on the Sanskrit here. Yo adhyatmik, well, of course, we've got these three terms here: adhyatmik, adidaivik, adibhotik, which in different contexts means different things. We're used to hearing about threefold miseries: adibhotik, adidaivik, adhyatmik, but these terms come up in other contexts also, and not always with the same meaning. Purusha means person, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that it's the covering on the person. It's not, doesn't indicate the spirit soul, but the covering of the spirit soul, personhood in that sense. Ya adhyatmik sa yo adhyatmiko ayam purusha, so asav evadi daivika. So there's a correlative again. Correlative pronouns, or pronouns that connect to one another. One who stands before me, he is the person I look up to, or whatever. You know, that they come together in pairs. Where there is prosperity, there is good government. You know, the where and the there go together. So here, yo and so, ya and sa, they go together. That person, Purusha, who's the adhyatmic person, is also the adidaivik person. And both of them, or the difference, vichcheda, between the two, ubhaya, is the adibhotik person. That's a sort of a rough sketching out of what's in the Sanskrit there, to the best of my rudimentary understanding. Now let's, and I think that background will help us as we read through Srila Prabhupada's purport, because everything that's in the verses, or all of these, so many things in the verse, are going to come out in Srila Prabhupada's purport, but we may not exactly see what he's glossing at what point, what words, what thoughts. So with this beginning, let us begin. And this journey, of course, is going to take us more than one session. We'll start today and we'll continue on Monday. And it'll take us a little longer because these two verses do go together. So let us go. The individual person possessing different instruments of senses is called the adhyatmic person. Person who has, or you can say the individual person possessing different instruments of senses is called the adhyatmic person. The sensory person, if you will, the covering that's or the level of personhood on which we find these various senses. That's the adhyatmic person. Okay, that's the adhyatmic person. And the individual controlling deity of the senses is called the adidaivik person. The senses are related We have senses, and then we have controllers of the senses. Well, I'm not the controller of the senses. There's a demigod who's controlling my senses. If it's my sense of sight, it's the sun. If it's my sense of touch, it's the vayu, because the air is what activates the sense of touch. If it's rasa, if it's taste, then it's Varuna, because he's the god of the waters, and unless you have water on your tongue, you can't taste. This has been discussed elsewhere in Bhagavatam, that there's this connection or interdependency between the senses and the controlling network, or the controlling deities of the senses. So our sensory self is controlled by the deity network of the senses, the demigods who are in charge of our senses. So the controlling deity of the senses is called the Adidevic person. And when we look back at the Sanskrit, the Yadhyatmika ayam purusha, the person who is the Adhyatmic person, sa aso eva Adidivika. He's also the Adidivic person. They're identical in some way. And Srila Prabhupada will open that up as we read on. And the embodiment seen on the eyeballs is called the adiphotic person, the body that you see. It's a little, what's the word? We can sort of get perhaps distracted by this mention of the eyeballs, but the embodiment that you see, that's the adiphotic person. Now, let us move forward with the purport. The supreme controlling summum bonum, highest truth, is the personality of Godhead in his plenary portion of Paramatma, or the supersoul manifestation. The personality of Godhead, Bhagavan, appears as the supersoul. In the Bhagavad-Gita, it is said, Atava bahunaitena kim gyatena tavarjana vishtavyaham idam kritsnam ekangshena stato jagat. So vishtavyaham, I'm spread everywhere. All the controlling deities like Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva are different manifestations of the Paramatma feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who exhibits himself in such manners by entering into each and every universe generated from him. Though Paramatma is everywhere, he's entered into each universe, into each atom, but still there are divisions of the controller and the controlled. For example, in the food controlling department, the controller of food is a person made of the same ingredients as the supreme person, as the person who is controlled. So there's that oneness. Ya Adhyatmik, sa Adidivik. The person who's the Adhyatmic person is also the Adidivic person. Why? They're made of the same stuff. You look at the demigod and you look at yourself, you're basically the same thing. You're a jiva, he's a jiva. He has a body, you have a body. So the controller of food is a person made of the same stuff that we're made of. So there's oneness there. Similarly, each and every individual in the material world is controlled by the higher demigods. For example, we have our senses, but the senses are controlled by superior controlling deities. We cannot see without light, and the supreme controller of light is the sun. The sun god is in the sun planet, and we, the individual human beings, or any other being on this earth, are all controlled by the sun god as far as our eyes are concerned. Similarly, all the senses we have are controlled by the superior demigods, who are also as much living entities as we are. But one is empowered while the other is controlled. The controlled living entity is called the Adi-atmic person, and the controller is called the Adi-daivic person. So there's your oneness again. We're both living entities. The sun god is a living entity. We're a living entity. But he's controlling us. That's the difference. The Adhyatmic person is controlled, and the Adi-daivic person is the controller. The ordinary living entity is controlled. The demigods are controlling. All these individual, all these positions in the material world are due to different fruitive activities. Watch this carefully. Any individual living being can become the sun god, or even Brahma, or any other god in the upper planetary system by a higher grade of pious work. And similarly, one becomes controlled by the higher demigods by lower grades of fruitive work. So we're all made of the same stuff, but the difference is someone's in a higher position, someone's in a lower position, according to our karma. So every individual living entity is subject to the supreme control of the Paramatma, who puts everyone in different positions of the controller and the controlled. So there's a controlled, there's a controller, but Ishvara Parama, there's so many, as you move up the hierarchy, controlled, controller, his controller, his controller. Everyone is both a controller and controlled. But when we come to the Paramatma, he's simply the controller. He's not controlled by anyone else. Our eyes are controlled by the sun, but the sun is not independent. The sun is controlled. So it's the controller, but it's also controlled. I'm the controller of my cat, my dog, my this, my that, but I'm controlled. And the supreme controller, uncontrolled by anyone else, is the Paramatma, or the personality of Godhead. Now, that which distinguishes the controller and controlled, that is, the material body, is called the Adibhautic person, Adibhautic Purusha. The body is sometimes called Purusha. Well, okay, so what's distinguishing, what's the difference between me and Indra? Me and Chandra, me and Surya? We've been assigned different bodies. If I'd gotten the body of Surya Dev, I'd be controlling the sun. But I got the body of some, 2-bit guy walking around in New York and New Jersey, so I'm controlled by the sun. If he had my body, he'd be under the control of all the various demigods. So the Adibhautic person, or what you see on the eyeballs, the result of our karma in the form of a gross body, distinguishes us from them. It distinguishes one living entity from another, particularly one grade of living entities, and another distinguishes between, okay, who's in charge here? Who's the controller and who's under control? Well, let's see what kind of body you got. Why is your dog under your control? Why is he not the controller? Why is it that the dog is not telling you, sit, or bring my newspaper? It's because it's received a particular type of body. And you've received another kind of body, so you're telling the dog, good dog, bad dog, whatever. So it's that adibhotik, the embodiment, that delineates this difference, that yes, assigns, as it were, this difference. The body is sometimes called Purusha, as confirmed in the Vedas, in the following hymn, Svavaya Esha Purusha Anna Rasamaya. This body is called the Anarasa embodiment. That is the food body, Anna. This body depends on food. The living entity, which is embodied, does not eat anything. However, because the owner is spirit in essence. The material body requires replacement of matter because of the wearing and tearing of the mechanical body. Therefore, the distinction between the individual living entity and controlling planetary deities is in the Anarasamaya body, the food body, the body that we feed, the body that we feed. The sun may have a gigantic body, and the man may have a smaller body, but all these visible bodies, the ones that you see with your eyeballs, are made of matter. Nonetheless, the sun god and the individual person, who are related as the controller and the controlled, are equivalent spiritual parts and parcels of the Supreme Being. Ya Adhyatmik Sa Adidaivik. The one who's the controlled is equivalent to the one who's the controller. We're both parts and parcels of Krishna. And it's the Supreme Being who places different parts and parcels in different positions. And thus, the conclusion is that the Supreme Person is the shelter of all. That's what we conclude. Because I'm not the one who's making these distinctions. I'm not the one who's assigning these different places. Okay, you be the controller, you be the controlled. That's not, you take this kind of body, you take that kind of body. That's not up to me. It's the Paramatma, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So again, Ishvara Parama, I'm the controller to some extent, someone's over me, someone's over him. But Parama Ishvara is Krishna. There's some things in the chat box, let's see. Rabindra Swarup Prabhu often says that the demigods are the nervous system of the universe. Yeah, they're the controllers of the whole organism, as it were, or the whole machinery. I've often wondered, Kendra says, how it actually works that demigods control the senses of so many different living beings, such as insects. I guess that's because I'm not a demigod. I think you're right about that. I think that is the reason that we don't know how they do it. You know, we do things, I mean, we do amazing things. You know, now they've got like a little, you know, you dial up on your phone half an hour before you reach home, and you've set the temperature that it'll be when you reach home, so you can save money and keep the heat off all day, but then turn it up, and it'll be just what you want when you get in. Now, how the heck did they do that? You know, even take the you know, a few hundred years back, and this is like wonderful stuff. How is this possible? Where I was seeing Rabindra Swarup Prabhu was, or it was Rabindra, somebody was talking on their wristwatch the other day. And I was remembering, being at the barber shop when I was like 8 years old and reading the Dick Tracy comic books, where this detective, Dick Tracy, had, a watch that you could do that with. You could talk to people on your wristwatch, but it was totally fabulous. It was just the imagination of the writers. No one could imagine. Well, they did imagine, but that's all they could do was imagine it. But now it's a fact. You can talk on your wristwatch. Even someone was telling me today, I think Shraddha, she was having to explain to someone because there was some sort of mathematical question that was posed in terms of different charges on your telephone, the international calls and local calls, long distance calls. And the students are wondering, what's that all about? Well, it's supposed to be a relevant example taken from our life. It's gone. There's no such thing as long distance calls. And, it's just get on Signal or WhatsApp or whatever and talk to somebody. We don't care what part of the world they're in. So all of these things are marvelous, or you can say, yeah, they're marvelous for us. How do they do this? How do they do that? But for us now, it's common. But for people earlier, it would have been, how could they do that? So for the demigods also, they do these wonderful things. Or even forget the demigods, a centipede. How does he know what foot down to put down next? What foot do I put down next? Or even a four-legged animal. You see a video of a horse running or a zebra running or something, and it's like, if I had 4 legs, I'd have no idea how to do that. Which leg goes first? And, it's all done gracefully and with speed and so on. I don't know how to do that, but the horse does it all the time. Prabhupada cited the lemon tree, which eats with its feet, as all trees do, and then produces citric acid in the form of lemons, in a nice little capsule there hanging from the tree, all biodegradable and everything. I can't do that. And yet the tree does it. So from that point of view, Prabhupada said, every living entity has inconceivable potencies. The starfish regenerates, and you cut off an arm, it regenerates it. I can't do that. And a little starfish can do that. So what the demigods can do is amazing, of course. And how they do it? Well, they know how to do it. The starfish knows how to grow that arm back. The centipede knows how to put the foot down. And the demigods know how to control everything. And thank you for letting me know that, there's 2 things here. Panchatattva says, Yovan Ananda says, Krishna consciousness is so nice that hearing Bhagavatam is food for the soul. Yes, even that's inconceivable. We're eating through our ears. We're drinking through our ears. Pibata Bhagavatam Rasavalaya. And we're getting nourishment. Sukadev Brikshit Maharaj is saying, I'm not tired, I'm not hungry, I'm not thirsty, because I'm drinking Bhagavatam. This is the spiritual process. And Tulsi Priya has her hand up. She's hidden behind my database, but let's hear what she has in mind.
Jai Maharaj, Hare Krishna. I think I have about 5 questions based on this purport.
Okay, you have 4 minutes and 5 questions.
Okay. Maybe I'll save them for the next time.
Okay.
Some of them, but yeah, it's just kind of just riffing a little bit off of what Yoganananda Prabhu said. I was with mental health during the pandemic, and whatever, and then somehow the subject got onto intoxicants, and we both have history with that. And then I was saying, but if you read the Bhagavad-Gita, that's the most amazing intoxicant. And I don't know why, but for some reason, as I was reading this paragraph, I was feeling like, the mind blown kind of sensation. And it reminded me of when I was a young girl in high school, and I was taking advanced math classes, even though I didn't belong in those classes, because I was in advanced English and I did belong in those. And I remember one day I was in the advanced math class and I was reading some science magazine, and the teacher, who I was the bane of her existence, she says, "What are you reading?" I said, "I'm reading about black holes and antimatter." And she says, "You can't even do algebra and you're reading about things like this." And when I read these purports, I feel like I'm reading something that's so advanced beyond my capacity, but I get a kind of bliss out of it, even though I feel like it's beyond my intellectual capabilities. And it's almost like a high. Okay, so the one question I wanted to ask you is, when you talked about the Purusha, for some reason the word persona came to my mind, and I looked it up, and there's the literary definition of persona, which is kind of the creation of the author. There's the psychology definition of it, which Carl Jung came up with. And I was just thinking, is this persona, in both senses, they're the kind of a projection of a consciousness. So would you say that when you talk about the Purusha, the individuals, jivas, they're all equal, they're not superior or inferior, but there's a sort of projection based on the consciousness of the jiva, and that's like a persona, either in the literary sense that it's a creation of a consciousness. Does that make any sense?
It does, but it's perhaps a little goes a little bit beyond the specifics of the verse. The verse is specifically pointing our attention to the distinct, that we're all the same, but we're different because we have different bodies. We're different. We occupy different places in the hierarchy of controllers and controlled because we have different bodies. Now, finally, yes, why do I have a different body? You can say it's a projection of my consciousness in a certain sense, yes. Or as a consequence of the consciousness I have, I've been awarded a particular body. So in that sense, yes, but it's not just like like a psychological projection might be a little bit, that I think we'd look at those things differently. But
yeah, I'm not trying to make a direct correlation, just saying that it kind of fits in a way,
Yeah, it kind of fits in a way. Yes. Let's see. Do we know who invented the word demigod? Some persons are offended if Surya or Shiva is called demigod. Well, as far as who invented it, I could give you a dictionary lookup. I don't think that's going to help us a whole lot, really, with the essence of your question. But
Maharaj, some people they say in Sanskrit it's called Dev, but in English translation it happens to be demigod.
Yeah.
So that's what the connection I was trying to make.
Right. Well, our demi is something like semi, it's like not quite God, a lower God, a lesser God, and they don't like that idea. For them, Surya or Shiva or Narayan are all the same. And so they don't like hearing that someone is God and someone is a demigod. But yastu Narayanam Devam Brahmarudradi Daivatai Samatvain Aiva Viksheta Yapashandi Bhaved. The Shastra says that if you think they're all simply on the same level, then Pashandi, you're a heretic, you're an atheist. So it's not only the word that they're objecting to the thought behind it, aren't they? What's in a word? They don't care that much about the word, but the word indicates to them that a distinction is being made between different gradations of God, and they don't like that. They're raised on the view of, some Bengali person who says, well, they're all the same. Whether you're worshiping Kali Ma or you're worshiping Krishna, it's all the same. Or going back to Shankaracharya, you worship Shiva, Durga, Ganesh, Brahma. What did I leave out? Durga. They're all the same. They're all projections of the same Nirakar Brahma, the same impersonal Brahma. So they don't like it because ultimately their view is impersonal. There's an impersonal truth, and whichever manifestation of God you like, whoever your Ishta Devata might be, yours and mine are all the same. But that's not the statement of Krishna. In the Bhagavad-Gita, aham adirhi devanam. Okay, there are so many devas, but who's the origin of these devas? Do you accept Bhagavad-Gita or not? Ask them that question, first of all, see if we're on the same, we're accepting the same sources. You accept Bhagavad-Gita, you're a Hindu? Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
You ask them, are you a Hindu? Do you accept Bhagavad-Gita? Yes, yes, yes. All right, Krishna says, aham adirhi devanam. I'm the source of all the devas.
Yeah.
So even if you accept that, Krishna is a deva and they're all devas, Shiva is Mahadev and Suryadev, and everybody's a dev and what have you. But Krishna says, I am the origin of all the other devas.
Yeah.
Right? So that makes Krishna superior. It makes him different. It makes him in a class by himself. Lord Shiva is not the source of all the other devas. Surya is not the source of all the other devas. In Bhagavad Gita, we never find Shiva is the source of all the devas. Surya is the source. Krishna is the source.
Right. Yeah.
Adirhi Devana. So, it's not just that Prabhupada's using a word you don't like. He's teaching a philosophy that you don't like.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense, like the qualities, like Krishna has 64 qualities and other devas will not have. But it's kind of like a common theme when I speak with some of my families who are not following, Vaishnavism. They come up with this question that why demigod? So I was like...
The same thing elsewhere. Aham adirhi devanam.
Right.
Rather, aham sarvasya prabhavo. I'm the source of everything. That means he's the source of Shiva, he's the source of Surya, he's the source of Durga, he's the source of Ganesh.
Yes.
So, let's take it off the platform of what word. We'll use your word, Deva. They're all Devas, but Krishna is the original Deva, and he's the source of all the others.
Right.
And that's the theme of these verses we're reading, that he's the ashray, he's the source, and everything else is ashrita, everything else is dependent on the source. He's the Parameshwara, the supreme controller, and everything else is controlled by Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you very much. Good question. And we are 6 minutes over time. I guess we won't be fined for that.
Tulsi Priya Mataji wanted to speak something.
We're already over. We can bring this up next time because there's a question I had about the demigods also, but I don't want Maharaj to go over too much.
Yeah, too much of me and it'll all be over. So let's stop. We're at 8:06 and we'll start again on Monday from text 8. And thank you all very much. Hare Krishna.
Jai.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Jai Maharaj, thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Thank
Hare
you
Krishna.
so much. Thank you so much. Hearing from you is not just like a what experience. It's a whole transformational experience. And I appreciate it very much.
I hope you don't get transformed into something terrible.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Lalit Prashad Prabhu.
We're
Hare-
camping tonight, Maharaj, so it's kind of dark. We're setting up our equipment, so that's what we're doing. But we're relishing your class. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hare Krishna, your kindness.
Hare Krishna. So everyone, I hope you can join us again on Monday where we'll pick up where we left off. And if you had questions from tonight, please save them because they may be relevant again and we'd love to hear from you. And Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Jayadvaita Maharaj ki jai.
Jai.
Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Gaur Premanande.
Evil.
Jai.